Every family has something they'd rather sweep under the rug. Ours just happened to show itself at my son's wedding on the Sunshine Coast. In broad daylight, in front of chandeliers, fairy lights, and enough champagne to fill a backyard pool. Liam looked handsome that day, happier than I'd seen him in years, which in itself made turning up worthwhile. Chloe, his new wife, glided around like she'd stepped straight out of a glossy magazine. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect family, standing behind her. Or so I thought. My name's Margaret Clark. Most people call me Maggie, and I'm 62. For the past 15 years, I've been quietly perfecting the art of being pleasantly forgettable. Not poor, not struggling, just ordinary enough that nobody bothers to look twice. In Australia, being understated is practically a superpower. People leave you alone if you look like you've already got your life sorted. Liam and Chloe had dated just under a year before announcing the engagement. I'd met her twice. Both times left me with the same impression. She didn't quite know what to do with someone who wasn't impressed by her money. Our first meeting was in a cafe in Brisbane. Chloe spent 20 minutes firing off questions about my little unit on the south side, whether I had much super, and if I'd ever considered downsizing into a granny flat. I stirred my cappuccino, nodded politely, and mentally filed her away into the drawer labelled "Useful to remember later." The second time, she and Liam popped by unannounced. She scanned my home. Kmart cushions, old but well-kept dining table, Corolla out the front, and gave me that tight smile people use when they want to look polite, while silently judging everything in sight. I didn't blame her. Some people only know one way to assess the world: price tags and postcode. The wedding itself was spectacular. The Bartlett estate stretched out along the Sunshine Coast hinterland. 50-odd acres of manicured lawn, a boutique vineyard, and a function space so shiny it could have been airlifted straight from a home design show. Native flowers everywhere. The kind of view tourists think all Australians wake up to. For the big day, I wore a simple dark green dress from Maya, a light shawl for the evening breeze, and my mother's old opal pendant. Not flashy, not attention-seeking. Just the sort of thing people expect a retired nurse to wear. That's the trick with privacy. You don't hide. You simply blend into whatever story people already tell themselves about you. To my neighbours, I'm the woman who does the odd shift at the aged care home, grows herbs in Bunnings pots, and complains about petrol prices like everyone else. They see the Corolla, the Woolies bags, the washing hung out at dawn, and they've already completed the rest of the picture. And honestly, I let them. Nobody pays attention to a woman they think they've figured out. The ceremony was beautiful. The reception, well, that's where everything shifted. The Bartletts had gone all out. A live band, grazing tables longer than my lounge room, waiters topping up champagne before you even realized your glass was empty. The whole place twinkled under fairy lights strung through the gum trees. I was tucked at a side table, perfectly content being invisible, watching Liam and Chloe dance their first dance. For a moment, it felt like the world had settled nicely. Then Chloe arrived with her parents. "Mum, Dad," she chirped, syrupy sweet. "This is Liam's mum." And then, with the kind of smile that cuts more than it charms, "She's on a pension and lives in a little townhouse near Logan. She's very humble." There it was, the label, neatly wrapped in politeness. Her mother, Vanessa, gave me a quick scan. Shoes, dress, hair, as if I were part of the decor. She wasn't sure matched. Diamonds everywhere. Enough sparkle to light up half the room. But her father, Graham Bartlett, was the one to watch. At first, he did that confident nod wealthy men love to use. The kind that says they're used to being the most important person around. Then he paused. Really paused. He leaned forward slightly, brow furrowing. Sorry, he asked, slow and careful. Did you say your name was Margaret Clark? My heart thudded once, sharply. I smiled the way nurses do when someone's about to faint. Yes, Maggie usually. The colour drained from his face. You're not. You can't be. He swallowed. Southern Cross Equity, the silent partner, the one who took majority control of Bartlett Urban Projects 3 years ago. For a moment, even the gum leaves seemed to stop swaying. Chloe's smile faltered. Vanessa's hand shot to her necklace. Liam turned, confusion written across his face. Here's the thing about real wealth. People think it looks like luxury cars. Big watches, loud conversations about investments. They never expect it to be a woman in a Maya dress and sensible sandals who brings potato bake to family barbecues. That was the point. That was always the point. I think you've mistaken me for someone else, I said gently. But we both knew he hadn't. I saw the exact moment the memory hit him. That Brisbane boardroom, the day his over-leveraged company was saved at the last possible minute by an anonymous investor and a very quiet woman in a navy blazer who spoke less than 20 words. He hadn't looked at me twice then. To him, I was just someone's wife, a formality in paperwork that rescued his empire. Now, standing in his fairy-lit garden, I watched panic flicker behind his eyes as he realized the humble mother-in-law from Logan might just be the one person capable of collapsing the life he'd been performing for years. And right there, in the middle of my son's wedding, I realized something too. 15 years of carefully crafted invisibility had just cracked wide open, and there was no putting it back. I barely slept. All night, the wedding replayed in my mind. Not like a dramatic film, just a stubborn memory refusing to leave. Chloe's smug little smile, the clinking glasses, and Graham Bartlett going white as chalk the moment he recognized me. 1 minute I was the quiet mum in a Maya dress. The next, I was the woman who held the papers to his entire company. By sunrise, I stopped pretending rest was possible. I made myself a cuppa, pulled on my old dressing gown, and stepped out onto the back deck. My little patch of lawn, the gum tree I'd planted years ago, the still air before the heat settled in. Normally, it was calming. This morning, the kookaburras were laughing so loudly I felt like they were having a go at me. At 7:06 a.m., my phone rang. Liam. Of course it was. Mum, we need to talk, he said, sounding older than he had any right to, at 32. I'm coming over. He arrived 20 minutes later, still in his dress shirt from the night before, sleeves rolled up, tie shoved in his pocket. Hair messy, face tired. The same expression he used to wear in year 10 when he'd come home, hoping I could fix whatever he'd messed up. Mum, he said, pacing my living room. What on earth happened last night? I wrapped both hands around my mug, letting the warmth settle my nerves. What do you mean, love? Please don't downplay it, he said. After you left, Chloe's dad pulled me aside. He started asking weirdly specific questions about Dad's work, your job at the hospital, and whether you'd ever been involved in corporate takeovers. Ah. So the ripple had already become a wave. What sort of questions? I asked gently, even though I already knew the answer. The sort people ask when they think someone's been hiding something big. He rubbed his forehead. He said you looked like someone from a board meeting 3 years ago. Something about Southern Cross Equity and Bartlett Urban Projects. I didn't speak. Liam finally stopped pacing and looked at me. Properly looked. The way his father used to when he sensed something deeper under the surface. Mum, are you part of something? Something you've never told me about? Before I could reply, my phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Hi, Maggie. Lunch today? There are a few things Liam and I would like to discuss. Chloe. I showed the message to Liam. He groaned. When Chloe wants lunch, it's never just lunch. It means she's planning something. I didn't disagree. He sank onto the couch. Mum, you have to tell me the truth. All of it. Outside, the magpies began their morning chorus. Cars hummed along the main road. Everything was perfectly normal, except the part where my life felt like it was being slowly unstitched. I took a slow breath. Sit down, love, I said softly. I'll tell you. But you need to listen properly. This isn't simple. He nodded. But before a single word left my mouth, the front door rattled. 2 taps. Polite, firm. Liam peeked through the curtain. His face drained. It's Chloe, he whispered. And her mum. Of course it was. People like the Bartletts never wait for answers. They fetch them. Preferably before breakfast, while everyone else is still half asleep. Let them in, I said, steadying my breath even as my pulse quickened. The door opened. Chloe stepped in, first, wearing a crisp white blouse, hair immaculate, looking like she'd just stepped out of a real estate advert. Behind her came Vanessa. Pearls at 8 a.m., which, in my experience, is the Australian equivalent of loading ammunition. Maggie, Chloe said warmly, far too warmly. We thought we'd swing by before lunch. There are some family matters we'd like to clear up. Vanessa's eyes flicked around my living room. The bookshelf, the second-hand couch, the crocheted rug Mum made before she passed. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her expression said everything. Modest, small, beneath us. I gestured toward the dining table. Feel free to sit. They didn't. Chloe folded her arms. Last night, Dad realized he'd seen you before. I stayed quiet. He said you were at the acquisition meeting when Southern Cross Equity took over Bartlett Urban Projects, she continued, sitting quietly, not drawing attention, like someone who didn't want to be recognized. Vanessa stepped forward a little. Maggie, who exactly are you? For 15 years, I had lived a life designed to look simple, tidy, ordinary, unthreatening. But that question, who exactly are you, was the one that had been waiting for me all along. Before I could answer, Liam moved in front of me. Mum doesn't owe you anything, he said, voice firm. God bless him. But this wasn't his battlefield. I touched his arm. It's all right. Then I looked at Chloe, polished, composed, calculating, and at Vanessa, who appeared to be staring at a picture that didn't match the frame she'd put me in. I think, I said slowly, it's time we all had a very honest conversation. Because this, right here, was the moment everything stopped being quiet, and the moment I stopped being invisible. By midday, Brisbane's heat had settled over the city like a warm doona, heavy, familiar, the kind that makes you move a little slower without complaining about it. I stood outside the cafe Chloe had chosen, a fancy riverside spot where everything cost more than it should, and the waitstaff pretended shoes told them everything they needed to know. A very Chloe choice, polished, strategic, and designed to keep the upper hand. Liam parked the Corolla beside the curb and hurried around to open my door. The poor boy was still shaken from the morning ambush at my house. Mum, just go easy, yeah? She's stressed. She's calculating, I corrected gently. There's a difference. He didn't argue. He rarely does when he knows I'm right. Inside, the cafe buzzed with office workers picking at overpriced salads and retirees claiming they'd treat themselves for the 10th time that week. Chloe was already on the balcony, typing on her iPad like she was chairing a board meeting. She stood when she saw us, smile bright, tight, and practiced. Maggie, thanks for coming. We have a lot to discuss. Not Mum, not even a warm hello. Straight to the agenda, very on brand. We sat. A waiter arrived immediately, with oysters, sourdough, and a bottle of Tasmanian wine. Chloe didn't bother with menus. She'd ordered everything already. Thought we should celebrate becoming a family, she said lightly. Sure. In Chloe's world, celebration always came with terms and conditions. Vanessa wasn't there, which told me this lunch wasn't about politeness. This was strategy, pure and simple. I let Chloe speak first. So, she began, fingers folding neatly like she was about to take minutes. After the wedding, Dad was shaken. I took a sip of water. Was he now? She nodded. He said he recognized you from the acquisition meeting years ago. The takeover that saved our company. Our? I raised an eyebrow. I mean my family's company, she corrected. Dad said you were in the boardroom, quiet, observing. Silence stretched between us, warm and awkward. Maggie, she continued, I'm not accusing you of anything. I just want transparency. If you have financial ties or corporate interests we don't know about, it affects all of us. All of us? I repeated. Yes, she said, leaning in. Family planning, stability, our combined assets. Combined. Meaning hers, Liam's, and the ones she assumed I was hiding. Liam inhaled sharply. Chloe, you're acting like Mum owes you a full tax return. She ignored him. Look, she said, tone sliding into something firmer. If you're connected to Southern Cross Equity or any other investors, we need to know. Especially before Liam and I start our own family. There it was, blunt, ungraceful. Very Chloe. I kept my expression steady. And what exactly are you implying? I asked calmly. She lowered her voice. I'm implying that if you're wealthy, really wealthy, it changes obligations, structures, expectations between families. Liam's jaw tightened. Since when do we need structures? Since yesterday, she snapped. Since Dad realized who he was talking to. The cafe noise softened around us. Even the magpies seemed to pause in the gum trees overhead. I gave her a measured smile. And what do you think it all means, Chloe? She straightened, almost triumphant. I think you've been hiding something big. From all of us. From Liam. Liam turned to me, eyes full of confusion, wanting something, anything, that made sense. Before I answered, a waiter delivered Chloe's barramundi. She didn't touch it. Maggie, she said, settling back in her chair, I know people in business. I know shell companies. Silent partners. Dad always said the buyer of Bartlett Urban Projects was a woman with presence, but deliberately low profile. She rotated her iPad towards us. A grainy news photo from the takeover. Executives, lawyers, and in the corner, half-shadowed, a woman who could easily be me. There's a resemblance, she said. Wouldn't you agree? Liam stared, as if seeing me for the first time. I felt the fragile walls of the life I'd built, the modest townhouse, the herb pots on the back deck, the casual shifts at the aged care home. Pressing inward. Not breaking, just shifting. Then Chloe delivered the line she'd clearly practiced in the mirror that morning. If you are that investor, Maggie, then you owe this family honesty. And if you aren't, this is the moment to clear it up. I set down my fork, with the steadiness of someone who's seen real emergencies, not imagined ones. 30 years in emergency departments, a decade navigating Queensland health bureaucracy, and 15 years handling investments that could make seasoned executives sweat. None of that had rattled me like this quiet theatre on a balcony in Brisbane. I looked at Chloe. You want answers, I said. She nodded. And you'll get them, I leaned in, calm as a surgeon preparing an incision. But before I say anything, you need to understand one thing. She blinked. What's that? My smile was small, steady, impossible to misread. You've stepped into something far bigger than you realize. Because for the first time in years, the invisible woman wasn't hiding. And I had no intention of fading back into the background again. Liam didn't speak the whole drive home, not a word. He just stared out the window, jaw tight, tapping his foot the way he used to when he was a boy, waiting outside the dentist, bracing for bad news. I let him have the silence. He needed it. To be honest, so did I. When we pulled into my driveway, he finally turned to me. Mum, are you the woman in that photo? There it was. The question he'd been swallowing since lunch. I didn't answer straight away. 15 years of careful living had been built for this very purpose. So my own son would never have to ask me that. The quiet townhouse, the Hills hoist in the backyard, the sensible little Corolla. A life that looked tidy, ordinary, unthreatening. But truth doesn't stay buried just because you've tucked it neatly into a drawer. Come inside, I said quietly. You deserve the whole story. He followed me in, shoulders curled inward, like someone bracing for impact. I put the kettle on out of habit. It's what we do in this country, no matter how bad things get. And he sat at the dining table, elbows on his knees, staring at nothing. I slid a cup of tea towards him. Before I tell you anything, love, you need to understand something important. I didn't hide money to punish you. I hid it to protect you. He lifted his head. Protect me from what? From becoming someone who expected life to fall neatly into their lap. Liam let out an incredulous breath. Mum, that's a bit harsh. It's honest, I said, and you know it. He didn't argue, and that silence said more than any words. I sat across from him. Your dad and I made a decision years ago, back when you were still at uni. He'd been tinkering with that design of his for ages. You remember? Well, when a tech group in Adelaide bought it, it did better than either of us expected. Liam straightened. How much better? Enough to change our lives, I said simply. Enough that we had to be smart about it. His face tightened. So Chloe was right. You've been hiding things. No, I corrected softly. I chose silence. He rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed. Why not tell me? I worked my ass off thinking we were just normal. I wanted you to work your ass off, I said, because the moment people know you come from real money, everything shifts. Friendships, job offers, even relationships. I paused. Especially marriages. The words landed, hard. Liam swallowed, voice rough. So, how much money are we talking about? I didn't give him a figure, not yet. It's significant, I said. Significant enough that Chloe's questions weren't random. She's been circling this for months. He frowned. Circling what? You, I said gently. Your future, your access, and whatever she thought I was hiding behind my little townhouse near Logan. He shut his eyes for a moment. Mum, I married her because I loved her. I know, I whispered. That's what makes this so hard. Before he could say anything else, my phone buzzed. A message from James Sullivan. My financial advisor of 15 years. Call me ASAP. We have a situation. The timing made my stomach tighten. What's going on? Liam asked. I don't know, I said, grabbing my handbag. But it won't be anything good. He stood immediately. You're not going alone. We drove into the city. Traffic thick, river sparkling in the afternoon sun, Brisbane pretending everything was perfectly normal. But the moment we stepped into James's office, the look on his face told me the day had shifted again. You're not going to like this, he said, closing the door. Someone's been poking around. Poking around where? I asked. Your trusts, the shell companies, your connection to Southern Cross, even historical transactions. My jaw tightened. Who? James hesitated, then turned his screen towards me. A name glowed on the report. Chloe Bartlett. Liam's breath caught. You're joking. James shook his head. She's hired someone. I'm guessing a private investigator. Whoever it is, they're digging. Hard. Liam dropped into a chair, hands covering his face. Mum, I'm so bloody sorry. I wasn't angry with him, not even close, just tired, deep in the bones. She's not doing this to satisfy curiosity, James added quietly. She's preparing something. A case? I asked. Could be, he said. Or she wants leverage, influence, control. Liam looked at me, devastated, ashamed, pulled in two directions at once. What do we do now, Mum? And this time I didn't soften my voice. We stop playing defense, I said, and we get ahead of her. Because if Chloe had decided to start a war, then she clearly had no idea who she was up against. I didn't say much on the drive home from James's office. There are moments in life where silence does all the talking, and this was one of them. The kind of silence that sits in your chest like a warm, heavy stone. Liam kept stealing glances at me, like he expected me to burst into tears or crack a joke, or confess to running an underground empire. I did none of those things. I just drove, steady, calm, while Brisbane's skyline softened behind us, dipped in that gold wash you only get at the end of a Queensland afternoon. When we pulled into my driveway, I finally exhaled. Come inside, I said quietly. We need to think this through properly. Liam followed me in, shoulders stiff, eyes full of worry he didn't know how to name. Sit, I said. He sat. I stayed standing. It gave me a bit more air. And met his eyes. Love, this isn't your fault. He shook his head. Feels like it is. It isn't, I repeated. But what happens from here? That does involve you. He swallowed. What do you mean? I took a breath. Chloe isn't just being curious. She's building a story. One where you and I look like the problem. She wants leverage before she makes her next move. Next move, he echoed. Financial, legal, emotional. People like Chloe don't poke around for fun. And if she's hired someone to dig into corporate records, she's preparing for something. His face tightened. A separation? Maybe. Or she's trying to secure her position before anything blows up. He rubbed his forehead. Bloody hell. Pretty much, I said. But he needed to hear the worst of it. Liam, there's something about your wife you need to understand, and you won't like it. He braced himself. She didn't marry you, I said softly. She invested in you. His whole body flinched. That's not fair, Mum. It's honest, I said, and I think a part of you has known that for a while. Before he could respond, a car door slammed outside. Footsteps followed, fast, clipped, impatient. Then bang, bang, bang. Firm knocks, not polite ones. Liam tensed. Who the hell? I already knew. I opened the door. Chloe stood there in activewear, hair pulled back tight, a leather folder wedged under her arm, eyes bright with indignation. She looked like someone who'd marched over straight from a reformer Pilates class, with vengeance as her warm down. She didn't wait for an invitation. She walked straight past us. Maggie, we need to talk, she declared, dropping the folder onto my dining table. Now. Liam stepped forward. Chloe, you can't just... Oh, relax, she snapped. This affects all of us. She flipped open the folder. Inside were printed documents. Screenshots, company structures, ASIC records, trust outlines. The kind of mess you get when someone is digging, without understanding what they're looking at. One name jumped out immediately: Southern Cross Equity Number 3, Trust, the holding vehicle I'd used. "Where did you get these?" I asked, though it barely mattered. "I hired someone," she said, as if ordering a private investigator was normal Friday behavior. "A professional." "A PI?" Liam stared. "You serious?" "Yes," she fired back. "Because your mother has been hiding something massive, and I'm not stupid. I knew something was off." I folded my arms. "So tell me, Chloe, what exactly do you think you've discovered?" She lifted a single page. A grainy screenshot. The boardroom. The same image she'd shown us at lunch. "You bought my father's company," she said, breath unsteady but sharp. "You... not some faceless investment group. You walked in and took over everything that was meant to be mine." Liam frowned. "Your... what?" "My future," she snapped. "Dad always said I'd take over one day. I was supposed to step in when he retired. Until..." She jabbed a finger at me. "You swooped in." I held her gaze. "The company was going under, Chloe. You stole it." "No," I said calmly. "Your father sold it, because he had no choice." Her breath hitched, a mix of anger and humiliation twisting together. "You took everything," she whispered. "And now you're hiding behind your little townhouse and pretending to be some modest nurse." "And you," I replied, "married my son because you thought he came with a future you could control?" The room went still. Liam looked gutted. Chloe froze. Even the fridge hum seemed to pause. Then she said the line that broke something in him. "I didn't marry him for money. I married him because I thought his family had connections, influence, a name that mattered. Something more than..." She motioned around my living room. "This." Liam's face fell. Completely, utterly. I stepped forward, voice low but steady. "Chloe, you've hired a PI. You've dug into private records. You've contacted my advisor. You've trawled through trusts and old filings." She didn't deny it. "So," I continued, sliding her folder gently back toward her, "let's make this simple." She straightened as if ready to fight. "If you want to turn this into a battle," I said quietly, "you're not going to like how it ends." Her chin lifted. "You think you can intimidate me?" "No," I said. "I think you've underestimated the wrong woman." Silence thickened. Then I spoke the line that finally made Liam see the truth. "All this digging, all this scheming, tells me one thing." Chloe swallowed. "What?" "You're not interested in my son. You're interested in what you think he should come with." And Liam, finally, painfully, saw it for what it was. The first crack had formed. I didn't say much on the drive home from James's office. Some silences aren't awkward. They're deliberate. They give your mind room to line up the pieces. That was the kind of silence sitting between us. Liam kept glancing over, as if waiting for me to break, or crack, or collapse into some confession that made everything easier. I didn't. I just drove. Brisbane was dipped in that soft, late afternoon gold. The kind that makes the river look calmer than it has any right to be. The kind of light that lies to you. When we pulled into my driveway, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. "Come inside," I said. "We need to think this through properly." Liam followed me in, shoulders tight, eyes cloudy with guilt he hadn't earned. "Sit, love." He sat. I stayed standing. I needed the ground under my feet. "This isn't your fault," I said. He shook his head. "Feels like it is." "It isn't," I repeated. "But what happens next?" "That depends on both of us." He swallowed. "What do you mean?" "Chloe isn't just digging," I said softly. "She's shaping something. A story that makes you and me look like the problem. She'll push it as far as she needs." Push it where? Divorce? Possibly. Or she's just securing her position before anything comes out she doesn't like. He dragged a hand through his hair. Jesus. I replied. Pretty much. But he wasn't ready for the harder truth. Liam, she didn't marry you. She invested in you. He flinched, as if I'd slapped him. That's rough, Mum. It's honest, I said. And somewhere deep down, you know it. Before he could argue, the universe gave us no time at all. At 6:32 the next morning, my phone buzzed. Not a call, not a text, an email from ASIC. Subject line, RE, inquiry, regarding beneficial ownership and reporting obligations. My stomach tightened. ASIC doesn't send friendly notes before breakfast unless someone's been stirring the pot. The message was formal, polite, and sharp enough to cut butter. A request for clarification about certain structures, and a reminder that non-compliance could trigger a review. I didn't need to guess who'd triggered it. Chloe hadn't tiptoed into war. She cannonballed. Liam shuffled into the kitchen a few minutes later, hair messy, eyes half awake. Mum, you're up early. I never slept, I said. He hesitated. Did something happen? I handed him my phone. He read the email once, then again. Bloody hell, he muttered, a rare swear from him. She actually did this. Yes, I said. And she's not finished. Over money? No, over control, status, being right. People like Chloe don't stop when they lose footing. They claw. He paced in small circles, hands on his hips. Mum, I've got to fix this. You can't, I said gently. Not this part. He turned, confused and desperate. Why not? Because this isn't a relationship issue anymore. It's a legal squeeze. If ASIC opens a review, they'll crawl through every trust your father and I ever touched. It doesn't matter that everything's legal. Complicated structures look suspicious when someone waves them under a spotlight. Liam's face fell. So she's trying to bury you in paperwork? She's trying to corner me. Before he could reply, the doorbell rang. We both froze. Too early for friends. Too early for deliveries. Liam opened the door. A man in a charcoal suit stood there. Mid-50s, polite smile, clipboard in hand, the type of man who delivers things no one wants. Morning. I have a notice for Mrs. Margaret Clark. My grip tightened slightly. He handed me a sealed envelope, nodded, and walked away. I didn't have to open it. But I did. A formal letter from Vance Legal Chambers, a firm known in Brisbane for taking on ugly disputes and enjoying the fight. Liam looked at me. Mum, what now? I set the letter on the table. She's hired lawyers. He went pale. What does that mean? It means, I said calmly, she's preparing to paint me as a threat. To her, to you, to her marriage, to her family name. She'll spin whatever story suits her. He shook his head. This is mad. She can't. Oh, she can, I said. And she will. I opened the letter fully. A request for information. Carefully worded, professionally sharp. They wanted details about my trusts, my holdings, any financial influence over Bartlett urban projects. They weren't asking. They were positioning. Liam stared at me, devastated. She's using the law against you. Yes. She wants to make it look like you manipulated everything. Yes. His voice cracked. Mum, what if she ruins you? I reached over and took his hand. Love, I've survived night shifts, bureaucrats' grief, and raising a son alone while managing investments that would terrify most people. Chloe Bartlett is not the scariest thing I've met. He swallowed. So what now? This is chess, I said. She's made her first aggressive move. Now it's my turn. What move? Information, I said. Before she builds her story, I need to know what she's told her lawyers, what she sent ASIC, what she's planning to twist. But how? He asked. I gave him a quiet, cold smile. The kind that only appears when a woman has run out of patience and fear at the same time. I didn't get this far by being naive, Liam. He stared. Mum, you're not seriously thinking about... I lifted a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Your wife hired a private investigator. He blinked. And? And now, I said, picking up my handbag, I'm hiring someone better. Because Chloe might have fired the first shot, but she had no idea who she'd just pushed. And after 15 years of silence, I was finally ready to push back. By the time I reached West End, the morning rush had slipped into that late morning shuffle. Cyclists weaving through traffic, tradies lining up for flat whites, office workers drifting out for early lunches. Brisbane felt warm and loose, a bit hazy, like the city was taking a long breath. But I wasn't there to enjoy the view. I parked across from the sushi place and climbed the stairs to Harper Investigations. A quiet little office above the smell of rice vinegar and fresh tuna. No signage. They didn't need any. The people who required their services tended to ask quietly. Inside, the place smelled faintly of paper, eucalyptus spray, and old carpet. A receptionist pointed me toward a small meeting room. John Harper was already there. He stood when I walked in, giving my hand a warm, steady shake. Margaret, been a long while. Too long, I said. Though I wish today was friendlier. He gave a small, sympathetic smile. It rarely is in my line of work. I took a seat opposite him, grounding myself. My daughter-in-law has been digging. Into me, into trusts, companies, Southern Cross, all of it. She's hired her own PI, and now a legal team. John didn't blink. Not his first rodeo. What do you need from me? I need to know who she's hired, what she's said, and what they've already picked up. And I need it sooner rather than later. He nodded. Right. I'll run a background check on the agency she's using. But Margaret... He leaned forward slightly. This woman... How bad is she? I gave a quiet, humorless smile. She's not violent. She's just the type who causes maximum trouble while keeping her manicure intact. John exhaled softly. One of those? Yes. The sort who mistakes ambition for entitlement. He didn't ask for more. Smart man. I'll have something for you within 48 hours, he said. If she's been careless, I'll see the pattern straight away. A bit of tension finally slipped off my shoulders. Thank you. John, don't thank me until I tell you how to shut her down. When I got home, Liam was pacing the lounge like an anxious emu, phone in hand. Mum, she's been texting non-stop. What's she saying? He handed me the phone. Paragraphs, screenshots, accusations that made less sense the longer they went on. A handful of passive-aggressive quips, and one line that carried an edge sharper than it intended. Your mother has jeopardized our future. If she wants conflict, she'll have it. I handed the phone back. Don't reply, I told him. She's after a reaction. Liam collapsed onto the couch, palms pressed to his eyes. I just don't understand. Why is she doing this? Why me? Why us? I sat beside him. Because love. People like Chloe don't love people. They love what people represent. Security, position, the next step up. Until yesterday, she thought you were that step. He shook his head slowly. I feel like an idiot. You're not an idiot, I said gently. You're decent. And decent people sometimes assume others are the same. He breathed out, shaky. I should talk to her. No, I said simply. Not while she's worked up. Anything you say will end up printed on a lawyer's letter. He slumped further. So what now? We gather information. We stay calm. And we don't let her write the story first. He nodded, though he looked sick. Mum, what if she drags me into something legal? What then? I looked him straight in the face. Then we make sure she regrets even trying. His eyes widened a little. The way he used to look at me when he finally realized I'd been the tooth fairy. Except this truth was heavier. His mother wasn't just a neat widow in a small townhouse, doing casual nursing shifts and driving a Corolla. His mother had moved money, real money, through structures built to survive storms. She'd negotiated with suits who never saw her coming. She'd taken over companies quietly, firmly, and without apology. I wasn't someone you boxed in, not for long. That evening, I made dinner mostly so my hands had something to do. Chopping carrots steadied me more than deep breathing ever had. Halfway through slicing, my phone buzzed. A message from John. Got something. Not great. Call me when alone. My heartbeat lifted. I walked into the backyard and rang him. John, what's going on? He didn't soften it. Your daughter-in-law didn't hire a run-of-the-mill PI. She went with a more aggressive outfit. The type that preps cases for messy separations, inheritance fights, allegations of financial coercion. They specialize in pressure tactics. A cool wave rolled through me. She's not just digging Margaret. She's trying to build an argument that you interfered with their finances, influenced Liam, hid assets, and disrupted their future. That's completely false. I know, he said, but false claims can still make a mess. I steadied my breath. Anything else? There was a pause. Yeah, he said. She's lodged early inquiries with Centrelink and the ATO. I went still. She's framing it like you've been misrepresenting income streams. I closed my eyes. People don't always attack your money. Sometimes they go after your reputation. And in Australia, you don't mess around with the ATO. Even innocent people get headaches. How far is she willing to go? I asked quietly. John didn't hesitate. Margaret. She's gearing up for a full-scale push. I gripped the phone tighter. Then she's about to learn, I said softly, that she's chosen the wrong woman to provoke. Because hiding was over. Silence was over. And after 15 years of keeping my head down, I wasn't invisible anymore. Sleep didn't so much as brush past me that night. I sat out on the back deck with a blanket over my knees, listening to the motorway hum and the odd magpie calling into the dark. Brisbane nights always have that soft, heavy quiet. The kind that leaves your thoughts with too much room. And running through all of it was John Harper's voice from earlier. She's gearing up for a full-scale push. Not dramatic, just matter of fact. Sometimes that's worse. By dawn, I didn't feel tired, just sharpened, like steel that had been reheated and left to cool the right way. At 6:30, Liam shuffled out of the spare room, hair sticking up, like he'd wrestled his pillow all night. You didn't sleep, he said. Nope, I replied, pouring tea into my chipped old mug. You? He shook his head. Barely. Mum, what do we do now? I handed him his tea. Now we get ahead of her. He frowned. How? I didn't answer straight away. Instead, I went to the filing cabinet, the one no one ever thought twice about, and unlocked the second drawer. Inside lay 15 years' worth of my life. Trust deeds, investment summaries, acquisition notes, the documents Thomas and I prepared before he died, all the quiet work that built the life I never advertised. Liam stared at the stack, like it was radioactive. Mum, what even is all this? Everything Chloe is trying to turn into a weapon, I said. He swallowed. So this is why you kept quiet? Yes, I said simply. People behave differently when they think you have something they want. His face pinched with guilt. And I introduced her to us. No, I said firmly. You fell in love. She saw opportunity. That's on her. Before he could argue, my phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Noon. Our place. Bring your financial documents. See, Liam read over my shoulder. Bring your... She's lost it. Calm, I said. This tells us something. That she's unhinged. That she's worried, I corrected. Desperation makes people bold. At 11:45, we arrived at the Bartlett townhouse. All glass, angles, and landscaping, designed to be photographed rather than lived in. Liam hesitated at the gate. Mum, she's going to twist everything you say. I know. Maybe we shouldn't go in. We should, I said. I need to see what she thinks she can get away with. He buzzed the intercom. Chloe's voice came through, bright but brittle. Come up. Inside, the air smelled like expensive candles and lavender diffusers battling stress. Chloe stood in the kitchen, wearing a tailored beige suit. Notebook in hand, posture stiff enough to snap. On the marble bench sat 3 folders, neatly labelled, Margaret Clark, Financial Behaviour, SC Equity, Connections, Liam Clark, Marital Assets. My stomach tightened. She had a file on my son. Liam went pale. Chloe, what is this? She ignored him. Emily, she said, in that slow, clipped tone people use when they've convinced themselves they're being reasonable. We need to stop dancing around everything. I sat. She remained standing. You've been dishonest, she announced, and your financial situation affects my life, Liam's life, and our future children's lives. Liam snapped. We don't... Future children, she cut in. Don't get dramatic. My jaw tightened. She'd always been good at dismissing him. Chloe, I said, what exactly do you want? She gave a tight smile. Transparency and access. To what? I asked. To your portfolio, your trusts, any assets that will eventually pass to Liam. It's reasonable that I understand the financial future of the family I married into. Liam looked horrified. You want Mum's inheritance? Yes, Chloe said plainly. I married into this family. I have a right to know what the future looks like. No, I replied calmly. You don't. Her smile twitched. Emily, you don't understand how these things work. Oh, I do, I said. Better than you think. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a notch. You've been manipulating the situation, she insisted. Hiding behind your retired nurse image while quietly pulling financial strings. You lied about who you were. No, I said. I kept my life separate. There's a difference. She closed her notebook sharply. You're affecting my marriage. No, I replied. Your behaviour is. Her cheeks coloured. If you don't cooperate, she said, voice tightening, I'll go back to the authorities. And next time, I won't be so gentle. That was the line, the moment she overplayed her hand. I stood. Slowly. Deliberately. Chloe, I said, if you push me again, you won't enjoy what comes next. She tried to laugh, but it came out thin. You think you can threaten me? I'm not threatening you, I said evenly. I'm giving you a reality check. Her eyes flickered. I leaned in just enough for her to really look at me. You've rattled a few agencies. You've poked at documents you don't understand. You've tried to box me in. But you haven't thought this through. She swallowed. And for your sake, I added quietly, I hope you stop before you find out how good I am at finishing things quietly. Her confidence wavered, genuinely this time. Not because I raised my voice, not because I postured, but because she finally realized she'd made a very simple, very dangerous mistake. She'd gone after the wrong woman, a woman who'd spent 15 years being underestimated by people who thought they were smarter. For the first time since I'd met her, Chloe Bartlett looked unsure. And she should have been. Because I wasn't the fragile widow in a green dress she thought she could bulldoze. I was someone who knew how to survive storms. And she had just walked me straight into one I knew how to win. The boardroom sat high above the Brisbane River, like a glass observatory. Quiet, polished, pretending to be neutral. Beneath us, ferries cut through brown water, tradies sweated under the late morning sun, and office workers hustled between lunch spots. Down there, life was normal. Up here, we were about to put a price tag on my son's marriage. Present in that echoing glass box, me, Liam, Chloe, her parents, Graham and Vanessa Bartlett, and a man in an expensive navy suit who introduced himself as Marcus Hale, partner at a boutique commercial and family law firm. James O'Connell sat beside me, files stacked with surgical neatness, tie pulled loose just enough to show he'd already sensed the mess we were stepping into. Marcus opened the meeting with a voice smooth enough to butter toast. Let's begin. My client, Mrs. Chloe Bartlett Clark, has concerns about Mrs. Clark's undisclosed assets and the impact on both families' financial well-being. He hit undisclosed assets, the way some people hit brakes at a yellow light. A touch too hard, very intentional. James didn't flinch. Mrs. Clark has complied with every ASIC and ATO requirement. Her structure is complex, not questionable. Chloe leaned forward, eyes glinting like she'd rehearsed for this moment in the mirror. This isn't just about legality, she said sweetly. It's about honesty, about family responsibility. While my parents were fighting to keep their home, Maggie was quietly pulling strings and pretending to be ordinary. Vanessa made a soft, wounded little sound. Graham didn't speak. He just stared out at the story bridge like it might offer him a way out. I folded my hands. Chloe, I didn't pretend anything. You made assumptions based on a Corolla and a pension card. That's not on me. Marcus cleared his throat, sliding a document forward. The concern is behavioural. Mrs. Clark acquired Bartlett Urban Projects under the umbrella of Southern Cross Equity, while allowing the Bartlett family to assume the buyer was institutional. Additionally, Mr. Bartlett's consulting contracts have created an unhealthy dependency. Dependency? I repeated. I threw him a lifeline. You're welcome. Across the table, Liam's eyebrows shot up, a mix of horror and dawning respect. Marcus kept going. In light of new information, my client seeks a formal financial arrangement, recognizing the interdependence of these two families. Here it came. James asked, "What sort of arrangement?" Chloe reached delicately into her leather folio, withdrawing a stapled packet like she was unveiling scripture. "A family trust," she announced, "structured in Queensland. Initial funding of around $20 million from Maggie's assets. Managed by a family council, myself, Liam and Maggie. Equal voting rights." Liam's head jerked toward her. $20 million, Marcus added smoothly. In return, Mrs. Clark gains protection should ASIC or ATO inquiries continue. Ah, so that was the game. They rattled the cage with anonymous complaints, and now offered to protect me from the rattling. A safety net, in exchange for governance. Marcus concluded. I looked at them one by one. A family huddled together, not out of unity, but out of shared fear. Then I slid my own folder across the table. Chloe recognized the Harbour Light Investigations logo instantly. This, I said, is a summary of your communications with a private investigation agency over the last 3 months, including invoices. You paid them to dig into Southern Cross, my holdings, my tax record, and my trust structures. Marcus shifted. Vanessa's hand dropped from her necklace. Graham finally tore his gaze away from the river. I wasn't done. And this, I said, placing a second document beside it, is an analysis James prepared on the Bartlett finances. Your Mullaney estate, mortgaged to 85%. Lines of credit kept afloat by consulting contracts I arranged for Graham. And the personal loans taken out in your name, Chloe, in the last 6 weeks. Chloe went sheet white. You had no right. I had every right, I cut in. You brought regulators into my world. If you poke lions, you don't get to complain when they look back. Silence pressed into the room, thick as humidity before a storm. Finally, Liam said, voice low, "What do you actually want, Chloe? Just say it without the paperwork." Her jaw twitched. For a heartbeat, she looked like she might say everything. Instead, she pushed the trust document an inch closer. "I want security," she whispered. "For us, for my parents, for our future children." Future children, not ours, not his, hers. Entitlement wrapped in aspiration. I leaned back. "All right," I said. "Here's my counteroffer." James didn't try to intervene. He knew that tone, the one I used when I was done playing defense. "You withdraw every complaint you filed," I said. "ASIC, ATO, any firm you whispered to. You sign a legally binding agreement stating you will not contact me again, personally or financially." Chloe stared at me. "And in return?" "In return," I said calmly, "I wire $5 million into an account of your choosing, tax paid, no conditions. And I ensure your parents keep their house. Graham's consulting contracts continue for 3 more years." Liam choked. Marcus blinked. Even the aircon seemed to pause. Chloe's voice trembled. "You're serious?" "Completely," I said. "One side of the table, you leave my son and my life alone, permanently. The other side, a future you can't build with Liam, but can happily buy somewhere else." I folded my hands and let the words settle like dust on marble. "Now," I said softly, "let's see what you really came for." For a few seconds after I named the number, the room just stopped. No rustle of paper, no throat clearing. Not even the aircon hum seemed to cut through it. $5 million. My son's marriage. One choice. You could feel the Bartlett future wobbling on its axis. Graham was the first to move. He shifted in his chair, cleared his throat, and stared at the document in front of him like it might vanish if he blinked too hard. $5 million tax paid?" he asked, voice rough. "Yes," I said. "Transferred, clean, and separate from anything to do with Liam." Vanessa's hand flew to her pearls, fingers trembling. The lawyer, Marcus, started writing something down very quickly, as if he needed to anchor the number to paper before it floated away. But Chloe didn't look shocked. She looked like someone doing a spreadsheet in her head. Her gaze went distant, unfocused. The same look she'd had at the wedding when she was sizing up the vineyard, the band, the dress. Only now she was measuring something else. 5 million now? Or a lifetime of access later? Liam finally snapped out of it. "Mum, you can't do this," he said, voice breaking. "You can't just buy her out of my life." "This isn't buying," I replied quietly. "It's taking the fog away, that's all." He pushed his chair back and started pacing. "This is twisted," he muttered. "All of it. This is my marriage." "I know," I said. "That's why we're finding out what it's actually built on." Chloe's eyes sharpened. 5 million, she said slowly, "isn't enough." Vanessa made a tiny wounded sound. Graham swore under his breath. Marcus's pen stopped mid-stroke. I didn't look away. "All right," I said. "What did you have in mind?" She hesitated just long enough to check Marcus's face, looking for a cue that didn't come. 10, she said at last. 10 million is fair, considering the disruption to my life, to my parents, and the fact that you've been sitting on this fortune while we struggled. Liam stared at her, like he'd never seen her before. 10 million, he repeated. Chloe, listen to yourself. Marcus cleared his throat. Of course, that figure would be accompanied by ongoing consulting income for Mr. Bartlett as... No, I cut in. The price isn't 10. Chloe's jaw tightened. You offered 5. I'm countering. This isn't a garage sale, I said. There's no haggling. 5 million is the offer. It doesn't move. She held my stare, waiting for the crack that didn't come. Graham leaned forward, desperation leaking through his careful tone. Chloe, love, 5 million is... Dad, she snapped, not taking her eyes off me. Please. Then she turned to Liam. Is this what you want? She demanded. You want your mother to pay me to disappear? To walk away like none of this meant anything? He looked at her. Really looked. And I watched something inside him fracture. I want you to answer one question, he said, voice low. Did you marry me because you loved me? Or because you thought my family had money? Chloe opened her mouth. Nothing came out. For a woman who always had a line ready, the silence was louder than any confession. Liam's shoulders sagged. Oh God, he whispered. It's not that simple, she said quickly. I care about you, Liam. Of course I do, but you also care about control, I finished. And security and access? She shot me a look that could have stripped paint. Marcus tried to pull things back to neutral ground. Perhaps we take some time to consider. You have until noon tomorrow, I said. Chloe frowned. Why a deadline? Because I'm not letting you drag this out for weeks while you shop around for better leverage, I replied. By 12 o'clock tomorrow, you either sign a clean separation and take the 5 million, or the offer disappears completely. And then what? She asked. Then, I said, we let the complaints you lodged run their course, and I respond in kind. For the first time, I saw fear slip through her composure. Not much, just a hairline crack. But it was there. That's blackmail, she hissed. No, I said calmly. That's cause and effect. She looked to her lawyer, to her parents, back to Liam, searching for an ally who could pull her out of the corner she'd marched herself into. Chloe, Liam said quietly, if you loved me, really loved me, you'd tear that offer up without thinking. Her eyes shone, but it wasn't the kind of shine that comes from pain. It was calculation, straining to hold its shape. She picked up the stapled trust proposal, smoothed the edges and slid it back into her folio. I need time, she said. I'm not making a decision like this on the spot. That's fine, I replied. You've got about 20 hours. She stood abruptly. This meeting is over. Vanessa scrambled after her, clutching her handbag. Graham gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Shame, maybe, or the faint dawning realization that the safety net he'd been relying on wasn't actually his. Then they were gone. Marcus gathered his papers, gave James a tight professional nod, and followed, closing the glass door behind him. The boardroom felt twice as big without them, and twice as quiet. Liam sank back into his chair, eyes fixed on the polished table. Mum, what if she takes it? He asked hoarsely. What if she signs? Then you'll know exactly who she was, I said. His throat worked. And if she doesn't? You'll still know, I answered, because a decent woman doesn't set a price to stay married. He let out a broken laugh. That wasn't really a laugh at all. I feel like an idiot, he said. Like everyone saw this coming except me. That's not true, I said gently. You saw pieces. You just hoped you were wrong. He turned his head, looking at the skyline through the glass. The river, the bridge, the ferries cutting white trails through the brown water. How are you so calm? He whispered. I thought about all the nights in emergency. The families I'd sat with, the husbands and wives who'd walked in holding hands and walked out alone. "This isn't the worst thing I've ever seen," I said softly. "It's just the clearest." He nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "I loved her, Mum." "I know," I said. "That's not something to be ashamed of. Loving the wrong person doesn't make you weak. Staying once you know who they are, that's the danger." He swallowed hard. "And if she walks away with 5 million? Then consider it the most expensive education either of us has ever paid for," I said. "And the cheapest way to get your life back." He let out a long breath, shoulders finally sagging. "Tomorrow," he murmured. "Yes," I said, "tomorrow." Because by midday, one of two things would be true. Either my son still had a wife, or Chloe Bartlett would have exactly what she came for, and in both cases, the mask would be gone for good. The night after the boardroom showdown didn't roar or crash. It just settled. A stillness, the kind Brisbane gets before a summer storm. Warm, heavy, and too quiet for comfort. Liam stayed at mine again. I heard him long before I saw him. Footsteps moving up and down the hallway at 2 a.m. Then the sliding door opening as he sat outside, until the kookaburras announced morning like rowdy alarm clocks. He wandered in at 7, hair a mess, eyes red. "Mum." His voice cracked a bit. "If she takes the deal?" "Then that's the best thing that could happen," I said, steady. "And if she doesn't?" "Then we stop playing nice." He didn't argue. That alone told me everything about where his heart was sitting. By 10, the air in the house felt thick, like the walls were holding their breath. I made tea I didn't drink. He sat at the dining table, hands clasped, staring at them as though they might give him a different past. "Mum," he said suddenly, barely above a whisper, "was I really that blind?" "No," I said gently. "You were in love. There's a difference." He let out a shaky exhale. "Feels the same right now." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A message, not from Chloe, from Marcus Hale. "My client requests a meeting at 11:30 a.m. Neutral location. The Gardens Cafe, City Botanic Gardens. She will give her decision in person." I showed Liam. His throat bobbed. "I'm coming." "No," I said softly. "You've taken enough hits. Let me carry this one." He hesitated, torn, then nodded. "Call me the second it's done." "I will." The City Botanic Gardens always smell of warm grass and river breeze. Students stretch out with textbooks they never open. Office workers eat overpriced sandwiches. Tourists wander with sunburnt shoulders. But today, it felt staged, like the whole place was waiting. Chloe was already at a corner table when I arrived, sunglasses on, posture straight as a broom handle, hands clasped, back rigid. The sort of stance people adopt when they're trying to look composed from the outside in. When she removed her sunglasses, her eyes told the truth. Swollen, raw, shaken. Good. Not because I wished her pain, I didn't, but because clarity often hurts before it helps. "Emily," she said tightly. "Chloe." I sat. The silence between us stretched, long and taut. Finally, she inhaled. "I've made my decision." I waited. "I'm accepting the 5 million. There it was. No theatrics. No pretty packaging. Just a simple sentence that broke a marriage clean in two. I nodded. "All right." Her jaw twitched. "Don't look so pleased with yourself." "This isn't about winning," I said quietly. "It never was." "Yes, it is," she snapped. "Everything is. You just happen to play better." I didn't bother correcting her. Some truths land when they're ready. She looked down at her hands, then back up. "What happens now?" "You'll sign the agreement," I said. "My solicitor will have it drafted today." Once you withdraw every complaint, ASIC, ATO, the lot, the funds will be transferred. She nodded, slow and stiff. And Liam? She asked, voice a shade softer. He'll file once the paperwork clears, I said. And you won't contact him. Not for closure, not for explanations, not for anything. Her lips tightened. Do you hate me? She whispered. I looked at her for a long moment. No, I don't hate you, I said simply. But I see you clearly, and clarity isn't always flattering. She blinked quickly, swallowing hard. When I met him, she said, voice trembling, I wasn't planning anything. Truly. But once I realized who you were, what you had, it felt like my one chance to fix everything. For Dad, for Mum, for me. And instead of fixing your own life, I said, you dug into mine. She didn't deny it. There was something almost childlike in the way she dropped her gaze, not innocence, but recognition. After a long moment, she whispered, Tell him I'm sorry. No, I said gently. You can tell him yourself. Her head jerked up. But I thought, you get one conversation, I said, in front of me. After that, nothing. She hesitated, then nodded. We both stood. For a second, she simply looked at me, the woman she'd underestimated, challenged, provoked. The wall she thought she could climb, only to find it wasn't a wall at all. It was a cliff. Goodbye, Chloe, I said. Her voice wavered. Goodbye, Emily. She walked away, heels clicking sharply on the concrete path, heading down the garden trail without once looking back. When she disappeared behind a jacaranda tree, I finally let out a long breath, slow, trembling, human. It was over. Not the pain, not the aftermath, not what I'd have to say to my son, but the battle, this part, had ended. I pulled out my phone and called him. He picked up on the first ring. Mum? She took the deal, I said softly. It's done. There was a long silence, a breath, two. Then finally, okay. Collapsed relief, collapsed heartbreak, mixed into two quiet syllables. For the first time since the wedding, I allowed myself to feel it all. Not as the strategist, not as the fighter, not as the woman who'd pulled strings for 15 years, but as a mother who had just bought her son's freedom. Whether it cost too much or not enough. Tomorrow would answer that. The papers were signed at 3:47 p.m. 5 million transferred. Complaints withdrawn. Non-contact agreements locked in. Graham's consulting contract guaranteed for 3 years. And just like that, a storm that had raged through our lives for months ended with a handful of signatures and a quiet ding from my banking app. It felt almost ordinary, too ordinary, given what it cost. Liam didn't come to the solicitor's office. I didn't ask him to. He'd spent enough time choking on the smoke of a fire he didn't start. When I walked through the front door that afternoon, he was exactly where I'd left him. Sitting in the backyard, elbows on his knees, staring at the patch of lawn like it might offer forgiveness. He turned when he heard me. So, it's done? He asked quietly. It's done. He nodded, slow and heavy, as if his bones were tired of carrying truth. Did she say anything? I sat beside him. She said she was sorry, in her way. He let out a short, breathless laugh. Doesn't change anything. No, I said. But it mattered to you. He rubbed his face with both hands, eyes burning at the corners. I can't believe I didn't see it. I feel like a bloody idiot. You're not an idiot, I said gently. You're someone who trusted the wrong person. It happens to the best of us. He didn't argue. That was new. After a long silence, he whispered, Thanks, Mum. For what? For pulling me out before I drowned. I cupped his cheek. the same cheek I'd kissed after scraped knees and first heartbreaks. "You pulled yourself out," I said. "I just steadied the rope." He didn't cry. I think he'd run out of tears. The next few days moved slowly, like the city was exhaling with us. Liam filed for divorce. Chloe vanished from our world. The Bartletts retreated into quiet, embarrassed damage control. And I, for the first time in years, felt something odd, fragile, precious. Room. Breathing room. The kind you don't realize you've been missing until you finally have it. But with space comes clarity. And clarity sent me to my filing cabinet one afternoon with a decision humming in my chest. It was time to leave. Not to hide, not to escape, just to shed a skin that had protected me long after it stopped fitting. My townhouse had been armor, a disguise, a way of staying small enough that no one asked questions. But I wasn't small anymore. So I put it on the market. Liam helped me pack. Carefully, silently. We found old lanyards from the hospital, Thomas's scribbled notes on scrap paper, photos of us at the beach when Liam still lost his thongs every second outing. "Where will you go?" he asked. "I haven't decided," I said. "Somewhere with birds. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I don't have to be anything but myself." He nodded. "That sounds like you." "It sounds like who I'm becoming," I corrected. And it did. 2 weeks later, he turned up with sunflowers. His attempt at cheerful, even though the bruises still sat behind his eyes. "Mum," he said, clearing his throat, "I need to tell you something." "Yes?" "I met someone." My eyebrows rose. That was fast. "Not like that," he said quickly. "She works at my gym. Her name's Talia. I was talking to her about everything and she said something that stuck." "What did she say?" He looked almost embarrassed. "She said, you don't have to impress the right person, you just have to be honest with them." I smiled. A simple truth, but a good one. "She sounds lovely," he nodded. "She is. And Mum, she didn't ask about your money. Not once. Then she sounds even lovelier." For the first time since the wedding, I saw a softness in him. Not naive hope, but something steadier. Healing. A month later, I moved into a smaller place near the Sunshine Coast hinterland. A quiet street with gum trees that swayed like old friends and lorikeets that screeched far too early. I liked it immediately. Here I was, just Margaret, the woman who bought mandarins at the Sunday market and always forgot her canvas bags, the neighbour who chatted about the weather at the mailbox, the lady who brewed tea on the deck and watched the hills turn gold every evening. No one cared what I owned, or what I'd built, or what I'd survived. And that suited me just fine. I still managed my investments. Quietly, precisely, but I did it with bare feet, on warm hardwood floors, and kookaburras laughing overhead. Life wasn't simple, but it was honest, and it was mine. One Sunday, Liam sat beside me on the deck, the sky turning the soft orange that always makes Queensland feel like it's exhaling. "Mum?" he asked. "Yes, love." "Do you ever regret hiding who you were?" I took my time. "No," I said, "but I regret who I hid it from." "Who?" "Myself," I answered. He leaned his head on my shoulder, the same way he did when he was 10, sunburnt after a day at the beach. We sat there quietly, mother and son, two people who had walked through fire and found something gentler on the other side. And as I watched the last light slip behind the hills, I realized something. The real victory wasn't the 5 million, or the silence agreement, or the clean break. The real victory was this: a life lived openly, honestly, on my own terms. After 15 years of invisibility, I'd stepped into the light. And I wasn't planning to fade again.